Welcome back to Pass the Balance Sheet. Software should create leverage, not clutter. The right tools help a business run cleaner, faster, and smarter. They improve visibility, save time, reduce errors, protect the business, and support growth. But the wrong tools create costs, confusion, duplicate work, and another monthly subscription. Software is not the strategy. Software should support the strategy. A fancy platform will not fix unclear processes, bad data, or lack of accountability. Business leaders do not need the most expensive tech stack. They need tools that match their stage, their team, and the decision they need to make. Because the best software is not the flashiest tool. The best software is the software your team will actually use. Let's dig in. We're back.
We're back. Alrighty.
For me to
Well,
say this every single time, but this is not my favorite topic.
it is not. That's right. But it is one of my faves.
Yay!
I forgot that you're not a fan. That's right. That's right. Well,
Not a fan, just like it's not. I think like I know what my strengths and weaknesses are, and tech is just like not one of them. I think what we're talking about today, like why it matters, when it matters.
mhm,
I'm probably more apprehensive about making purchases in software than
mhm.
probably you are because it doesn't like wow me. Like you have to really wow me for to be like, yeah, this is a great investment. So I'm going to be a little bit more um,
Yeah.
reserved in making a software
A-
decision.
Absolutely. Well, I think we'll discuss this. I think we'll have plenty of opportunities to kind of talk about how this has manifested, at least in my experience. But I think it's good to have this reservation. If you're like just as a default, if you're open to, hearing out the weighing the benefits and the costs of onboarding, because in my experience, I've seen too much of the opposite of like somebody being very excited about something, not doing enough due diligence, which we'll get to in a lot of detail. Um, and then, signing up for a commitment that they can't get out of or whatever, and or not gaining anything out of it. So I appreciate the reserve. You really need to, as a business leader or as a department leader or as a CFO, like when these things roll up to you, you really have to kind of be the bad guy and ask all the questions that you think will like basically disprove the point of do we need this? And only if they wow you with like, no, here's what we're going to gain. And this is so much better, then you should proceed because as we're going to get into in this discussion, software migration is no small task. It is a beast. And I honestly don't know why I still love softwares and why I love leading software migrations. I have had so many difficult experiences and so many pain points and all of these things that you can't avoid, that they will happen in every software migration. I don't know why I haven't lost the love for it because there's a lot of stress that I have witnessed around this, but let's talk about it anyway.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really good points there. Like I'm not opposed to it. There just a value has to be added. And I
Yes.
think that's where a lot of my apprehension comes from is that when I get into these conversations about we need this software, we need to migrate software, they have seen the shiny object or they've
Uh-huh.
seen the shiny outcome, but they don't understand that process. And like you, I have been through multiple software migrations, and unlike you, I don't love them. Um, there's just no one's ever on the same page. There's never a clean cutoff date of like we're we're stopping this one and moving to this one. It just seems to go on forever. And so, a couple of things that every business absolutely needs when it comes to software whether it be QuickBooks, Zero, uh, NetSuite. I don't know. There's so many options out there, but you need accounting software. You need a way to track cash flow forecasting, what's coming in versus what's going out. You need a way to view and assess projects. So some sort of project management, task management. You need a way for all parties to understand where things are in the process. You need a CRM, which is customer relationship management. Um, Multiple ways to do this, but you need to know who you're talking to. You need to know who you're engaged with. You need to know who you're prospecting. Um, Document storage. This is going to be kind of your repository. Where are you keeping documents? How are you organizing the documents? Um, what documents need to be housed in a way that everyone can see them, and how are you locking down things that are not public knowledge?
Mhm.
You need communication tools. How are we going to engage? What is the appropriate way? You and I have talked about this a lot. Like, how I want to communicate is not necessarily how you like to communicate. And
Mhm.
we need to have a common ground of what communication looks like so that some people are not texting, some people are emailing, some people are calling. There needs to be common ground of what the communication is. And
Mhm.
then you need security access management. So these are things like, how do you store passwords? Is multi-factor authentication something that you require? What are the onboarding, offboarding essentials? And when are you reviewing these, and how frequently are you reviewing them? So
Mhm.
high level, some of the things that we are going to talk about today, and get into a little bit deeper in this conversation.
Yes, I love the different systems that you touched on that really every business needs. And before we dig into kind of our recommendations for different scales of businesses or the different tool that you need and what options you have with it, I first want to kind of go into the what you want to avoid in this whole software
Mhm.
search transaction. But before I do that, I wanted to jump on a great point that you made, your last point of the security access management. This one is huge, and it specifically means a lot to me because I'm married to somebody in IT security and so network security. So
Mhm.
I am constantly thinking about this kind of risk. But you know, whatever software you have, that has different licenses and even just access to banking and things like that,
Mhm.
it's in your best interest. Like it's a must. You have to have a log somewhere of like, these are our softwares, these are the users assigned to them.
Mhm.
It really should be in two places. You should have a schedule of the dues and subscriptions, licenses, whom they belong to, when they expire, all of that. You should have that on one hand, but also in the employee file, you should keep track of what access has been granted to employees. Because
Mhm.
to your point, you should be checking this list frequently. And when you're offboarding employees, it is so important to make sure that you cancel their access to these. So
Mhm.
thank you very much for bringing that one up. I'm sure it'll be music to my hubby's ears when he hears this in the episode. But um, I want to dig into some of the don'ts and some of the reasons why I've had some nightmares in software migrations. So first one, and I think this is like why your initial kind of take is you're not jazzed by, pretty shiny things on the surface, but
Mhm.
this is where a lot of business leaders, even finance leaders too, get very excited about, pretty dashboards. And one thing about dashboards that I want to say, having built many and also in the process of building one through a method that I'm not familiar with. So, kind of learning with one client. But the dashboards really, you want to make sure that number one, you understand how much time you are putting into your build
Mm-hmm.
versus how much time does it take you on a weekly or monthly or whatever basis to compile this information in other means.
Mm-hmm.
I currently am going through kind of a scoping project for this dashboard build, and that was my first kind of the first uh, way of working with this business and their many systems was really through Excel and kind of pulling
Mm-hmm.
these reports. And it was after seeing that I am just toiling in putting in so much work on a weekly basis that just to bring this one dashboard
Mm-hmm.
in combining multiple reports, doing searches in all of these reports, slowing down Excel like you wouldn't believe, because it is touching so many data points that like
Mm-hmm.
the file now is pretty much useless because it takes so long to load. That was my kind of justification of, hey, we're wasting my billable hours here. This is an opportunity cost for you. Let's build this damn thing in a sitting, and then we can use this. I can be more helpful to you with utilizing this dashboard,
Yeah.
so but I have seen really like the some of my trouble points that I want to convey to our listeners so they don't repeat is, number one, before you kind of engage in a software migration, to your earlier point, you really have to ask the question of like, what problem do I currently have that
Mm-hmm.
this thing is going to solve? And and you have to remember and keep asking that question and challenging the answer every step of the way before you sign the
Mm-hmm.
contract to agree to do this, software migration. Because one thing that will always be true, no matter how good you are with software or software implementations, how good you are with how great the demo went and all of that, one thing to always be aware of is you you have different when you're engaging with a vendor, with a software vendor, you're not working with the person who will be you're working with multiple
Thank
people, right?
you.
You're working with a
Thank you.
salesperson.
This is
And
one of
this
my biggest issues with software. This is one of my biggest, and every single time I have a conversation is is this the level of service I'm going to get when there is an issue? Because 9 times out of 10, right? Like your salespeople, so charismatic, they're great, they're awesome, right?
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
you have a problem a month in and you can't get a hold of anyone.
Right, right. And not only that, but it's kind of a poopy situation to be in and to put salespeople in. But this is
Hmm.
why some businesses actually like have like a sales engineer, because there is the salesperson's job is to sell this product, right? But
Hmm.
if you have a very engaged person on the client end, like you or me, who will like
Hmm.
interrogate the crap out of this software to ask them, like, is this going to fit my needs? Well,
Hmm.
what I have found, like most of my time, and you can probably vouch, and all of our listeners will encounter this no matter what the software is, the salesperson will want to like they want to make the sale. And so oftentimes they will make assumptions that it will work the way that you intend it to work when they are not really certain that it will. Like
Hmm.
they know these certain things on the surface. Yep, I'm comfortable with this. These are the talking points. But then sometimes they get curveballs and they're not able to answer them the right. You should expect to hear, hey, let me get back to you. Let me talk to the sales engineer and see that and make sure, let's validate that this works for you. Make sure you hear that answer, because most of the time you'll hear like, oh yeah, it'll absolutely do that. And it is not their fault. It's your fault if you listen to them and take their word
Hmm.
for face value. Down the road, when this product isn't working for you, nobody's going to give a crap that like, oh, well, my salesperson told me this. yes, like you had to do your due diligence to test it
Exactly.
out, and that's the other
Exactly.
point. Um, the other point is like when all possible, request a what's the word for it? Like a proof of concept.
Mhm.
Because again, either a salesperson, they might truly believe that something will work the way that you're describing, but they're not an accountant and they're not on the software build side, so they are taking a guess, and you really want to test your specific individual model in a playground. And a lot of softwares will have a little playground where they allow you, whether it's
Yeah.
48 hours or maybe it's a whole month to kind of test drive the system, and then and then commit. And that is your time to then, instead of taking somebody else's word as your research of the system will fix it, that's your time to test it out. Unfortunately, it's not always available to test it out in advance, and that might have some issues with that.
Yeah. You've probably seen this too in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I saw this all the time in the corporate world where
Mm-hmm.
you would have I mean even well, it happens in all departments, but you would have I'll use the finance department. I had a controller that had a they had a demo with a
Mm-hmm.
company. It's called Data Rails. I don't even know if they're still
Yep,
around.
I know. Yep, I know
Yep.
them.
Yep. So they had they had a demo with Data Rails, and it's fine. I don't care. Like if they want to learn something else or whatever, fine. But they came to me like, look, we have this cool opportunity. Like, we should really do this. And when I started digging in, like, well, all they're doing is taking the data and exporting it to Excel
Mm-hmm.
and then creating pivot tables. And you have to kind of build that process. Why wouldn't you just export the data yourself to Excel and create the pivot tables the way you want them? Like, I don't understand why we would pay $2,000 a month for you to create this. And to your point on it was a pretty dashboard. Like, after all is
Mm-hmm.
said and
Mm-hmm.
done, it created these pivot tables, but
Mm-hmm.
then it transported it into
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful dashboard that you could log
Yeah.
into and see things at a moment's notice. But having a pretty dashboard is not a reason to be spending
Mm-hmm.
$2,000 a month when you can create it.
Yeah.
And to your point on
Yes.
Excel, I don't know the complexities of what you dealt with. It sounded like it was a much bigger workbook, but 9 times out of 10, the dashboard that you're trying to create or the information you're trying to produce, Excel is very powerful and has come so far
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
last 5 to 10 years. The Excel that my parents grew up with is not the Excel that we have access to now. And
Mm-hmm.
most people are only scratching the surface on what
Mm-hmm.
capabilities are in Excel. And so, just my
Great,
little
great. No, I'm
tangent,
so
TED
glad you.
Talk.
No, you touched on a wonderful thought, and I'm so glad you did. I constantly get on my TikTok feed, I get commercials for data rails, and I like scroll because I have the same thought as you, and I want to kind of explain it to our listeners. You know, it does have data rails does have a place for. I've seen it with a client who had like 60 companies, and they
Mhm,
wanted to see them combined kind of in a more, instead of waiting for like this long process for consolidated financials and stuff like that. I could see the need for it, but and but the thing to your point is, like, you have to, when I see these fancy data rails commercials, they basically like advertise that you see the data in this like amazing, beautiful way. And yes, it's true and it's possible, but that requires for some, the beauty behind it is somebody had to think of the processes, put together these complex spreadsheets and all of that. And now they're being fed into this database, and it can kind of speed up the way that the data
mhm,
gets, that you know, displayed or worked with or whatever. But all the work behind it, you have to rely on your team to build.
Yeah.
And so I find those commercials so misleading because they really sell to you that like, yes, you can build, you can move mountains with an amazing finance
Yeah.
person on your team.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they can do that. And so whether it's with this software or with Excel alone, like to your point, it's an Excel extension. And there
Exactly.
are other similar things that similar vendors that I've talked to that I'm like, oh, like, so I'm not really gaining anything other than, visualizing it in a different
Mhm.
database that can kind of combine. What I do like about it is it's not, you can combine like, you can combine, your QuickBooks or whatever, you can
Mhm.
connect them in, but then you can also overlay, Excel sheets or whatever, and then you
Mhm.
can build these, actual to budgets or whatever that are coming from different sources. But again, that build, somebody has to come up with that.
Exactly.
So
And to
yes,
your
I'm glad you
point,
brought
and like
that up.
to your point that like your example is a great example. Like that's a situation where it would be super helpful. But again, playing devil's advocate, if I'm on a sales call and saying, yeah, I have 60 different companies that we do financials for the first 10 days of the month, and by the 20th, I have to have consolidated financials for all of these, they are going to look at you like I don't, you're speaking a foreign language to them. They only know how to use it for one company. So when you start
Hmm.
to give them this complex situation of like, yeah, this would be a great solution for my 60 companies and getting consolidated financials on the go, they are going to be lost in the sauce.
Yes. Um, Another thing that I have encountered and our listeners should consider again before engaging in a software solution is, um, what I often see is, maybe for techie people, the more functions, the more excited they get. Like, oh, you
Mhm.
can do these multiple things. But what I have found, people like simplicity. People don't like complex systems. And sometimes
Mhm.
the more bells and whistles you have, that means there's a higher learning curve to managing them, you have maybe more steps involved in, utilizing all the different features. And so you really have to ask the question, is it gaining or am I adding now new time doing these other things? But
Mhm.
I do want to be the devil's advocate to my own point here, um, where certain things in software, like if you've already purchased a software, you're committed to learning it the right way. Like I have a client right now who has a database. They have many systems, and I have to kind of figure out how to make them play with one another. And one of the systems, like one of the kind of hard talks and biggest challenges to this kind of dashboard build that I'm doing is, I have to talk about garbage in, garbage out. And
Mhm.
the current software that is being utilized, I don't know if it was a training issue during onboarding or what, but each salesperson and project manager uses it in their own way. So
Mhm.
some are updating their statuses of jobs, some are not. And so for the accounting person who is trying to close at month end and who's trying to tie to the accounting system, or even for me when I'm trying to get a backlog of like, well, what are all the bids that we've won that we're just waiting to schedule, past this month or whatever. I can't trust anything in the database because
Mhm.
it is inconsistent. And so before, we're working on this visualization thing, but the other first part of that, transaction is we need to get the whole company in the habit of using the system the right way, because
Mhm.
this will not gain you a damn thing
Yep.
if we can't trust the data. So that is, I guess, I could talk about these, mistakes and all of that all day long. But one thing to kind of sum my thoughts with is, do your due diligence. But you hear about a shiny thing, great. Now scope the crap out of it. Be the devil's advocate. Uh, have your team or your sales person for this prove to you why you should have it. Maybe
Mhm.
take the approach of Cash of, I don't think I need it. Prove me wrong.
Mhm.
Which problems will it solve and why? You want to make sure that your team is, we've touched on this in many episodes, that your team is behind the darn move, because if
Yeah.
they're not willing to use it, then you will only continue to have the garbage in, garbage out. So, major prep, asking questions and solidifying, do I actually need to make this software move before you do?
Well, something else that I would add to that is before you add anything, evaluate what you have. And
Mhm. Mhm.
even more so now with all of the the tech advances and the software updates and everything that's going on kind of in this industry,
Mhm.
you know, QuickBooks Online is not my favorite accounting software, believe it or not.
Mhm.
But it is very intuitive, it's very cost effective, and I kid you not, every day that I go in here, there is some new level of beta testing going on. And so it's actually just perusing in here because something on our list today to talk about is CRMs. And I'm like, well, I would give pushback on this because I'm a simple person when it comes to like I do have a kind of a built out CRM that I use. I'm not willing to pay for
Mhm.
one. I'm like,
Mhm.
what's changed in QuickBooks? So one thing is, yes, all of my customers are here, but the way that QuickBooks is updating is now you click into a customer and it's not just, a simple invoice deposit payment. You have activity feeds. You've got,
Mhm.
you can create assign tasks. You can
Mhm.
create a contract. You have details in here for them now, when they were contacted, notes section. And so QuickBooks has kind of added in this level of CRM. Do I want
Nice.
all of my employees in in my QuickBooks? No, but they also have permissions. You can only see the customer list or
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
And so the finance person in me is like, is this the best CRM on the planet? No. Is it usable for where I'm at now and
Mhm.
already
Mhm.
included in my monthly fee? Yes.
Mhm.
The other thing is now this is actually something that just came available this week and it is actually in beta testing currently. So
Mm.
if you don't see it, that's not my fault. Um, but contracts, one thing that I deal with a lot with my customers is they want to send estimates or proposals and have contracts
Mhm.
signed. QuickBooks now has this feature that I can create a
That's
contract
awesome.
in here, send it directly to them. And so I
Nice.
say that all to say, evaluate what you have already. Because
Mhm.
if you get on this call with, again, we're on this data rails kick, but sorry, data rails. But if you get on this kick with them about like all the things that they can add to your situation, are they really adding things that you don't already have access
Mhm.
to?
Mhm.
Really vet out that you don't have access to this or that you cannot create these things easily without the additional fee.
Absolutely. Great points. And I think we will touch here momentarily on some specific recommendations for different business sizes. And I definitely will have some recommendations to add on that train that you just on that same trajectory of using existing tools when it makes sense. So yeah, would you like to enlighten our our audience with some recommendation for different level sizes of businesses?
Yeah, so I mean, the first would be like a lean or small business, and we kind of coined up like the DIY stack, like do it yourself, very cost
Mhm.
effective. Um, these are great for startups. They're great for solopreneurs, small teams. They're pretty simplistic tools. Um, and they are they're great to try before you buy, if you will.
Hmm.
So communications would be the Google Workspace. If most everyone is already in, almost everyone that I work with is using the Google Suite. Like that's
Hmm.
where they go for email. And
Yeah.
so if you are purchasing your email domain through Google, you likely have access to the Google Suite. And the Google Suite is actually awesome because it has also made a lot of advances over the
Yeah.
last few years that it marries well with the Microsoft suite. So if you ever think that you've become so advanced that you can no longer house your stuff in Google, you can easily transition over to something a little bit bigger. But you can do your email here. You can create shared drives. So very similar to like the folder situation on a computer, but you can share it with very specific people. Maybe you have one for one team member or one department. Maybe you have one where the entire company can see. Um, it has docs, which is very similar to Word,
Hmm.
sheets, very similar to Excel, slides is like your PDF,
Uh,
or sorry, PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
Yeah,
Hmm.
PowerPoint. You can house your calendar here. There
Hmm.
is a chat feature. So, I don't know, like this is gonna date me, but like instant messaging or Teams, like
Hmm.
you can
Hmm.
chat right there.
Yep.
It has Google Meets, so you can do video
Hmm.
conferencing, you can create videos, forms, you can have contacts, groups. For those of you that aren't aware, YouTube is part of the Google Suite
Hmm.
now.
That's right.
Maps, you can house your passwords here. There is a
Hmm.
password keychain. Um, you can create tasks. The Google Suite is a very great tool for small businesses because it has almost everything you need to get up and running.
Hmm.
If you are not a fan of Google, like I said,
Yeah.
Microsoft 365 is another great one.
Yeah.
Accounting software. There are so many options. I do frequently just say QuickBooks Online because it is very simple, it's very inexpensive, it's very intuitive. Um, Zero is another great option. Most uh, bookkeepers, accountants, CPAs are going to be able to navigate in QuickBooks. It's also why I am a fan of it. There are limitations in QuickBooks Online that I don't love. My preferred accounting software is QuickBooks Desktop, but I'm pretty sure that's going away. The
Sounds
reporting in there
great.
is just superior to QuickBooks Online. Um, it is superior. There's really no other word for it other than it's a little bit more superior. But it has limitations and it's not
Hmm.
easily shared. Um, and so there is that. You typically have to have it in the cloud.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah. But there's some great options for accounting software. I would, at the very bare minimum, say QuickBooks. There's some options out there, such as Wave. Um,
Yeah.
there's another one, Zoho Books.
Hmm. Hmm.
They're not very intuitive. They are not frequently used, and so there is a little bit of a learning curve, especially if you don't um, love your bookkeeper or CPA and you have to make a switch.
Really quick,
Um,
sorry, I want to jump
yeah.
on a comment that you just made. Really, good point of like when you're scoping out, you made a point about some of these are less known or not as frequently used. That is something to keep in mind when you are choosing your initial software, is
Mhm.
seeing what plugins it has with others, because maybe not now, but maybe down the road you want to have the system talk to other
Yep.
software like maybe Bill.com or something like that. And I think Bill.com talks with QuickBooks, Zero,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure about like Zoho Books or some of those other smaller ones. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is like, okay, if I'm going with a small kind of unknown one just to save money here, is that going to cause a problem later because I'll want to feed it into things that can't connect? So, but go ahead.
Exactly. No, those are great points. And a lot of times people go with these ones because they're cheaper. And
Mhm. Mhm.
we've said this before, like you get what you pay for, and cheaper is
Mhm.
not always going to be better. It's going to come with some of its limitations. And so yeah, I would keep that in mind. When you're talking to some of these companies, I would ask, you can ask, what kind of large companies are using these so that you guys can get an understanding of
Yeah.
like, oh, if so and so is using this, then it must be
Mhm.
something good. And then again, asking about the support. So for CRMs, I am just a simple gal. Like you can create some great things with HubSpot, especially when you're small. If you have a growing team, you likely are going to need something. Like I said, QuickBooks is introducing some CRM capabilities. But HubSpot, they do have a free version and it does have quite a few plugins. It is not fully intuitive.
Mhm.
It's I would say a Salesforce light, and
Mhm.
Salesforce is a behemoth of a CRM. But there's things like Airtable, Notion, um, but really all you need to know is who am I talking to, where are we at in the conversation, and you can do that very cost effectively through an Excel spreadsheet. Um, Task management. This is again, I'm a simple person, like as simple as we can be in the same system. I like to play in the same sandbox. If I have to
Mhm.
go
Mhm.
to this for accounting, this for customers, this for task management, this for docs, you've lost me. Like I don't
Mhm.
even know where
Mhm.
to go. I'm just going to use none of it.
Mhm.
Um, so some task management, like you can use Notion. One of my employees loves Notion. I'm still learning it. But uh, Google has task
Yes.
management
Mhm.
capabilities. Monday.com is a great one for task management capabilities. Trello, Asana, ClickUp. Um, Document storage. This one is so important. Like I've spent a lot of time on these other ones, but I'm going to spend a moment here. Especially in our industry, document storage is so important because of audits, because of
Mhm.
all of the things that we do. You need to have a solid document storage. You need to have 100% buy-in from your team on where that's going to be, what's going to work for everyone. You can't have sales in one place, finance in another. And so you got to find something that works for everyone. Google Drive, again, a great place. You can create permissions on who can see what. Um, but SharePoint is another great one. Um, you can do it on
Dropbox,
a
I guess. Yeah.
Dropbox, a local server. You have to
Mhm.
have one, and then you have to have a master sheet on where things are stored and how they're
Yes.
stored. And
Good
I'm
point.
such a stickler, like for the things that don't annoy me, it's crazy. But the things that do annoy me are like, really? That's what gets you? How you store things matters. And so for me, we store client statements. It does not matter what client folder you go into, the statements are organized in the exact same way. You go
Mhm.
into the client, you go into statements, you go into whatever account we're looking at, then you
Mhm.
go into the year, and then it is labeled '01 January, '02 February. And it's very purposeful that way because it's alphabetical or numerical and how they organize that. If you put the number in front, you know you're going to get January to December in
Mhm.
those. But there's not any inconsistencies. I can go into ABC client or XYZ
Mhm.
client, and the organization is exactly the same. I don't need a roadmap into how to navigate a client's
Mhm.
folder. Passwords. I am not an IT person, so my IT people will probably love me for this. You have to have password protection, especially in our industry. You, if you are working with a external firm on your bookkeeping or financial support, ask them what their password protection is, what their password repository is.
Mhm.
you need to know. They need to be protected. They can't just have your username and password out there hanging out. There's lots of ways you can do it. One password. Again, if you want to be super simplistic, you can do an Excel spreadsheet, but it has to be password protected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Bitwarden. I don't know. There's a million of them, but
Keeper, yeah, yep, yep.
Keeper, you have to have one. Like
Mm-hmm.
you need to have these passwords protected. And if you have cyber liability insurance, it's one of the first questions they're going to ask if you get
Yes,
uh, into a situation where your password's safe and secure.
absolutely.
So the main message I think that we want to get across here is that keep software spend low and build strong habits first. Like this is your baseline. All of
Mm-hmm.
these things that we talked about, you can build upon. Like you don't have to spend a lot to make them more um, you don't have to spend a lot to have them grow with you. The second one, I'm not going to spend as much time here, but it would be the growing business stack. So these are businesses with true departments, managers, repeatable workflows, and growing headcount. Their focus is on visibility, consistency, and accountability. And again, you can be in the Google Workspace, Microsoft 360. You don't really need to make a huge change here. Accounting, you can move from a standard QuickBooks to more of a plus or an advance. And most of the softwares that are in the accounting realm, very similar. There's step ups to what you're doing. Um, the cash flow model can be done via your accounting software. You may have to do some fun tweaks and some sort of Excel or
Mm-hmm.
uh, numbers or whatever Google is. You may have to do some fun stuff in there. But for your CRM, again, there's step ups to HubSpot, there's Pipedrive, there's Zoho, tasks. Again, you can take these free versions that we talked about in the last one, Asana, Monday, ClickUp, Smartsheets. You can even use the Excel spreadsheet and start to create pivot tables to,
Mm-hmm.
extract some of the data. So you can take these very simplistic things that we talked about in that first stack and just elevate them doing slight tweaks. Um, the document storage doesn't really change. SharePoint, Google Drive, Dropbox, Notion. You typically are going to be paying for the amount of storage you're using. So again, we're going from more of a free version to a step up. We didn't really talk about this in the first section, but uh, payroll, you can use things like Gusto, Rippling, Bamboo HR, ADP, Paychex, QuickBooks has a great option for payroll, and they have a
Mm-hmm.
repository for all of those
Mm-hmm.
things that not only you can be involved in, but your employees can be involved in. The main message on this kind of stack, this is where businesses stop relying on memory and start relying on your systems. And the final stack, I'm going to spend even less time here. Again, just think of it as a step up. We're taking what we have and moving the needle forward. And if you can't move the needle forward, this is where I would say those conversations about does new software make sense kind of come into play. So the scale ready stack, this would be best for larger teams, multi-entity companies, investor reporting, compliance, or complex operations. And you're focusing on things like controls, automation, consolidated reporting, and decision making. So again, your accounting, these are probably going to be bigger companies where they've outgrown QuickBooks. So we're talking about NetSuite, Sage, uh, Dynamic. Uh, and these are, again, step ups, and they typically are accounting software that are focused on your specific industry. So if you are in manufacturing, there's going to be a level of cost accounting um, put into it. If you are in manufacturing, there's going to be a procurement component to it. NetSuite also has a CRM. So we're talking like big step up here. Um, FP&A reporting platform. So this is where we're taking that kind of data rails conversation
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
on steroids. So think of data rails on steroids where there's still going to be work that needs to go into it, but it's really relying on your systems for the output. Your CRM, again, you can step up HubSpot. You can move into Salesforce, which is really the top of the line. You're going to be paying a pretty penny for that. Um, the HR really isn't going to change. Your price is just going to change because of what you're using. The task management, we should probably get a little bit deeper into this. This is where task management is going to change. You're probably going to need to use it, but you need full buy-in for it to work.
Yes.
Um, but the main message here, upgrade when the cost of messy data and manual work is greater than the cost of software.
I want to jump on so many trains here because you have really laid out a great landscape. I love the three buckets, and I want to touch first on kind of the main takeaway from the first bucket, which is, keeping that software spend low, but building strong habits first. And this goes again to my earlier point of garbage in, garbage out. If we're not utilizing, the software as it is now, why do we expect to get anything better in putting that system through a visualization? Like,
Visual.
visual, you know what I'm trying to say.
I got what you got.
But specifically, like you touched on the task management and also using existing tools. So I want to touch on those items. So to your point, kind of building those habits. Like myself and one of your workers who's obsessed with Notion, we have the software, like or we both love talking software to each other, right? Like, because we're just amazed by all of these bells and whistles and how much they make our life easier. But I have to say, I've been through this so often because I am so obsessed with these different project management tools, task management tools. I've experimented so many throughout the years, like as a
Mhm.
hobby, just like I want to know what this one does. I want to compare it to that one, and I have, there's a fine line between like organizing your tasks and then getting stuck in that task management assigning jail. One distinction that our audience should be aware of is some of these software tools, sometimes they're just tools, and sometimes, like, so if you're thinking, I'm outsourcing payroll, but you are going to like Paylocity, you have not really outsourced payroll because you're still somebody um, i- in your company is still going to have to prepare for the payroll, make the changes to the employees, do set up any reimbursements. Somebody still has to input all of this stuff in. And yes, the system is built to handle different states and all of that good stuff. But a caveat that goes with that is set up, set up, set up. You have to, again, this goes with the software migrations and what a mammoth they can be. Alrighty. Well, team, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed our opinions about various softwares. And to Kash's point, this is not over. We will be beating this horse even more. We have so much to say about this, and software gets updated very frequently, so our opinions might change as well. So we'll keep you guys in tune. When it comes to software, start simple, then scale. Build the process before buying the platform. Sophisticated software does not make a business sophisticated. Clear processes, clean data, and consistent execution will always matter more than fancy tools. The goal is not to have the most impressive tech stack. The goal is to have software that creates leverage, improves visibility, and supports the way your business actually runs. So do not buy software for the business you wish you were. Buy software for the business you are, with just enough room for the business you are becoming. Thanks for listening. If this episode resonated with you, share it with other businesses who can benefit from these discussions. Follow the show, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Pass the balance sheet.